Hello, and welcome to my first YouTube video. If you're new here, I'm Aries Baby, which you all should be new here because I just started this YouTube channel like maybe a month ago. I really decided I wanted to start using YouTube to reach a broader community of astrologers and people who just love to talk about astrology. I have been obsessed with astrology since I was like 13. You can ask my family, my friends. It's just something that I've always enjoyed, and I love doing research. And that's why I've really started to share my knowledge a little bit. And today I'm actually going to talk about a birth chart that I read recently. One of my followers reached out via comments and was like, "Hey, do you still do birth chart readings?" I actually used to have a website where people could request services, but with life and how busy I am, it can be very hard for me to read birth charts the way that I'd like to. If I had more time, I definitely would be. But I took it upon myself to be like, you know what? I'm actually down to read your birth chart. But if you don't mind, I would love to make it into some kind of video because I feel like maybe some people could relate, especially to certain placements or aspects. And she was totally on board. So shout out to her. I will not be using her actual name just because me personally, I wouldn't want my information out there like that. I mean, it's kind of ironic since I'm like, putting myself on camera and, putting myself out there, but I wouldn't put other people out there if they're not wanting to do that. So I'm going to respect their privacy and, move forward. So going forward, I will be referring to this person as C. I think the first thing I recognized when I looked at C's chart was the Scorpio stellium going on. There's a lot of Scorpio in C's chart. And I really just want to be able to unpack everything. If you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at my phone. I like to take lots of notes. So if you can see, lots of notes, lots of notes. But I will be kind of using my notes to take you through C's birth chart and the things that I observed looking at it. I do want to say too, I'm hoping that I have good enough editing skills to like add the birth chart here somewhere, so hopefully I can see that vision through. And I think it'll make it a lot easier too if you are able to visually see what I'm walking through as I'm talking about it. So, first thing I want to talk about is the Scorpio stellium going on. Just to let everybody know, I'm using tropical astrology and I'm using the Placidus house system. I feel like in the past, I've only really been comfortable with the whole sign house system, but I think as I've evolved in how I learn astrology and interpret birth charts, I think that using the Placidus house system is a lot better because it just feels like it fits people a lot better, in my opinion. So that's what I'll be using going forward. So the first thing I noticed is that C has a Scorpio stellium in the 12th house, and that does seem like a lot already. We know that the sun is ego and identity, while the 12th house is all about the subconscious. So it kind of sheds a little bit of light to C's chart and really kind of makes her come to terms with things that she may not be ready for. I think that when you have a stellium in your birth chart, it really emphasizes that sign. So already C has a lot of Scorpio energy going on, but it's definitely emphasized by all of those planets being packed into one house. So I'm going to start off with the fact that C is a Scorpio sun, which means that she's very self-aware. She's kind of got an all or nothing mentality, a lot of perseverance, lots of resilience. Scorpio is the sign of pushing through. It's the phoenix rising from the ashes. And so there's a lot of transformation that goes on here. C is the kind of person who is very careful about letting other people in. Scorpios really struggle with having trust and building that. And I think that if you want somebody who has Scorpio placements to trust you, you got to give them time. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen as quick as we'd like it to. But do know that once you gain their trust, you have their loyalty forever. Obviously, unless you break it. But Scorpios are very ride or die, very loyal, especially Scorpio suns, moons, risings, in my opinion. I think that it's really important for Scorpio suns to be able to understand where their inner power comes from because that is where they understand their inner truth, especially with the sun in the 12th house here. C has a deep desire for perfection, likes to be in the background, likes to be private, and sometimes with the sun in the 12th house, although we might want to be a little bit more introspective and introverted and don't really like to share our true selves with other people, it's very important that we don't really let that dictate our lives too much because we could be missing out on a lot of things just because we're afraid to put ourselves out there. I think that with the sun in the 12th house, C has a lot of potential, but she oftentimes might lack the self worth, which can actually derive from childhood experiences. I think that it can be hard to have a lot of confidence when you're not really given the platform or the environment to grow properly when you're a child. You don't have somebody constantly pushing you and saying, you know what, you can do anything you put your mind to. And I don't necessarily know C like that, but I do know with the sun in the 12th house, people who have this placement tend to feel that way. So, as I was saying before, C has a Scorpio stellium. Stellium, sorry. But this also means that C has Venus and Jupiter in the same house of her sun. So, with the sun conjunct to Venus in the 12th house, there is a really deep connection between spiritual love and artistic expression. I think that with a water sign in the 12th house, too, it can be kind of hard to deal with the emotions of that, especially behind closed doors. 12th house is all about privacy and wanting to be to yourself. And so, with the sun there and Venus there and Jupiter there, there's a lot of room for potential and growth if you can see your own potential, if that makes sense. I think that the 12th house is also the house of self undoing for a reason. When we look at the lessons that the 12th house is trying to show us, this can be a very transformative healing journey for us. I think, especially too, with Jupiter there, it kind of expands our knowledge, expands our boundaries a little bit, and kind of makes us realize that things are going to unravel as they're supposed to, and there's always bigger things in store for us. So, with the Sun conjunct to Venus, true, there's also a deep love for solitude. You really need time to reflect, and you also might be the kind of person who has secret relationships or want to keep their connection a secret for a reason. This can be because you are worried about public scrutiny, what the people you love think of your relationship. You don't really care for or like want people to comment on your relationships. And so a lot of times you keep that private. However, your self esteem is also very rooted in how the people you are in relationships with view you. And I think that this can also lead to self sabotage in a way when our self worth is very low and we're not able to realize that our own opinion really is the opinion that matters. We're the ones that are going to have to live with ourselves for the rest of our lives. And so, although relationships are important, it's also important to have a good relationship with yourself. With the sun conjunct to Jupiter, too, there's a lot of spiritual and inner reflection. It's kind of like the sun shines a little light on the things of our subconscious that we're not really willing to deal with or face head on. It kind of brings a journey of self discovery. And with Jupiter there too, it brings a level of spiritual wisdom and a strong belief in the higher power. You will see people who have Jupiter in the 12th house that their spirituality, their religion, their faith, a lot of the times is what helps them heal and understand themselves better. Although the 12th house can be a little bit scary, I think that it's important to face our demons and understand them, learn how to sit with them a little bit. And with the Scorpio stellium there, you have no choice but to do that. The sun is also square to Saturn in C's chart. So See, Saturn is in the ninth house of philosophy, which is also a Jupiter ruled house. This means that sometimes they may feel like life is asking way too much of them. Although they feel like they're capable, they may not always want to act all the time. Like I said, somebody with a lot of planets in the 12th house likes to keep hidden, likes to keep private. And when life is asking them to step outside of that, it can be very hard for them to want to leave their comfort zone. And this can lead to a lot of self limiting behavior, which means that C may experience some times where they feel like they're great, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But at the same time, C may also feel like, you know what, I don't think I can do it. And so they just don't do it. And, you know, what's that famous quote by Michael Jordan? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I think it was Michael Jordan. I don't really know sports like that. But I think that that's the theme here is to kind of believe in yourself. You don't know unless you try. With Saturn in the ninth house, though, this means that C may have a lot of high expectations for herself, although they also may have a hard time expressing the questions that they have surrounding life and philosophy and faith. They can have a very black and white point of view, and so it can be kind of hard to see things in the gray area and understand that things don't necessarily have to be to the extremes, which is kind of interesting too, since Scorpio is a sign that is known for its extremes. Although C has their Jupiter in Scorpio as well, it seems like C can learn from realizing that she needs to be able to make her own choices, her own beliefs, and that comes through a lot of reflection. The sun is also square to Neptune in C's chart, which means that sometimes C may struggle between the desire to be something special or want to be more than ordinary. You may be easily trusting when it comes to people. You're a daydreamer, an idealist, maybe overly empathetic and self sacrificing. And so already we can see a lot of mixed energy going on. On one hand, C wants to be able to hide in the background and not really let her shine show. But I think here too, especially with Neptune, Neptune is a planet of illusion, imagination, our dreams. We can kind of get caught up in what we think is happening and not really what is happening. And so in the second house here, it's all about self worth and value. And so C can have a distorted reality of their self worth. Like they may feel like they're very confident, but other people wouldn't say that they're confident, or the other way around, where they think they're very insecure, but they come off very confident in front of other people. The sun is also conjunct to Mars in C's chart, and Mars is in the 11th house. So, Mars in the 11th house means that you're really good at putting your ideas into actions. You also can think in the long term and actually build out a plan to complete your goals and do the things that you want to do. You also really like to help other people. And it's kind of funny, although you are very hardworking and willing to put in whatever effort necessary to reach your goals, you also may have been told you're rebellious in the past, or maybe currently, maybe you're still rebellious a little bit. And that's just because you like your independence. You're highly active, you have a very courageous energy, might be called impatient to other people. And it's very funny because the sun and Mars are both masculine energies going on here. And so this means that you're the kind of person who really likes the chase of completing things and doing things, and you have the energy behind you to actually do it if you want to. The sun is also sextile to the moon in C's chart, which means that you have a really good sense of self. Your emotions and will are aligned. It's like your emotions are able to be displayed through the way that you conduct yourself with other people. Your sun sign, like I said, is all about ego and identity, while your moon is about emotions and the way that you express them. And so when the sun and moon are feeling good vibes from one another, this means that you are someone who's pretty relaxed and easygoing. You're not really fighting demons in your head too much. I always say people who have like an opposition or a square between their sun and their moon fighting demons all day. So it's good that at least emotionally you feel taken care of by yourself. I think too, you have your moon in the ninth house, which means that you have a very understanding, imaginative mind. You are the kind of person who can see things from other people's point of view very easily. You have a very helping nature, and you may be interested in doing charity or some kind of social work to give back because you feel like giving to people and nurturing people is the way to make the world a better place. And the fact that your sun and moon work together very well means that your healing journey can be a little bit easier since you're feeling a little bit more guided, like you know, this is what I'm supposed to do. And it's nice to feel comfortable in that. C also has a moon Virgo. I already know I have a lot of moon Virgo people in my life, and they're very analytical, very organized. They can kind of nitpick a little bit, and this is just because imperfections are just not their cup of tea. You got to think it's Virgo, so it's very down to the details, very trying to understand why things are the way that they are. And I kind of just talked about how you have your moon in your ninth house, but your moon is also sextile to Venus, which is really, really good for relationships, meaning that you can express yourself naturally and comfortably when you feel love or feel emotions towards people. You're pretty articulate in that way where it can actually boost your relationships because you're so frank and straight to the point about your emotions. You may be a mediator for people just because of your calm nature and your ability to see things from other people's point of view. I think too, you're always in touch with your feminine side, which means that you kind of have an inner level of peace and positive energy, and other people recognize that about you too. You do have Venus in the 12th house, like I talked about earlier, so there's a little bit of secrecy and solitude when it comes to that. This can kind of make you a little less open as to if you didn't have your Venus in the 12th house, but the moon here really does aid you in trying to move away from that secrecy. It's okay that you have compassion for other people, but understand it's okay to have compassion for yourself as well. And retreating when you're dealing with things might be the way that you're used to coping, but it's not necessarily helpful for your relationships that you'd like to maintain if you disappear every once in a while because your emotions are too much. You also have your moon sextile to Jupiter. Like I said, we have the sun, Jupiter, and Venus all in the same house. So, with the moon sextile to Jupiter, you have a very cheerful and happy disposition. You're the kind of person who really uplifts those around you. You want to bring positive energy, although you also may be the kind of person who has really good compassion for other people and makes friends easily. It's important that you realize that you don't always have to be self sacrificing for everybody else. With Jupiter in the 12th house here, too, you might like to work alone or independently. And you also have a tendency for exaggerating a bit, but realize that it's okay to think things through instead of just going headfirst into your actions and decisions. Your moon is also square to Pluto, which you have Pluto in your first house. And with Pluto in your first house, you are the kind of person who has a very intense and strong will. You attract a lot of people because of your magnetic nature and you want power and you're the kind of person who shows initiative. However, with your moon squared to Pluto, Your emotional satisfaction is very deep and complex. It takes a lot for you to get there. You may also be easily swayed by your emotions or your desires, which can actually halt or make it difficult for you to transform the way that you need to when it comes to your first house, which is also self and identity. I think here you're able to heal when you can come to terms with what motivates you. And you can do this also by helping other people work through their stuff. You don't always have to look at your own experiences to try to understand. Sometimes learning from other people's experiences is okay too. With your Mercury sign, you are Mercury Scorpio, so very observant. You are the kind of person to speak with your emotions. You may also come off as very intelligent, which sometimes people can be kind of threatened by that. I think here too, with Mercury in your 11th house, that means that you're really good at socializing and networking. You should use this to an advantage as you can put yourself into different groups and associate with different organizations, and this can actually help you when it comes to bettering your communication, but also building that network you need to be successful and succeed when it comes to your goals. However, your thinking is kind of unusual and unconventional. You're always willing to communicate with people and exchange ideas, and people want to hear what you have to say too. They think that you have a lot to share, and when they can recognize that power you have behind your words and your thoughts and ideas, this will just make people love you more. Here too, your Mercury is conjunct to Mars, which means that you are all about that action. You're not just about talking about it and being like, hey, I want to do this. You're like, okay, I want to do this, and now I'm doing it, you know? And I love that people with Mercury conjunct to Mars, they are very confident in their abilities. They're very independent and they know what they want. And it's okay to be straightforward and direct, but sometimes that can come off as blunt and insensitive. So just kind of watch your crowd and understand who you're talking to. You also have your Mars in your 11th house too, which kind of helps keep that energy in the same area and realize too that, you know, even though you're very hardworking, you can also be equally rebellious, which might get you in trouble sometimes. Your Mercury is also trine to Uranus, which means you're very open to new ideas. You avoid making unfair judgments. You understand that not everyone's the same and everyone has a unique perspective, and you're always willing to try to understand that. It's very interesting because your ability to think outside of the box is what makes you understand other people's motives and the way that they think. However, you have Uranus in your third house, which can lead to a little bit of instability and variability when it comes to communicating. Although sometimes you may feel very confident in what you're saying, it can come off as very erratic or like you don't know what you're talking about. So, really choose your words carefully. And with Mercury, Scorpio, you tend to be the kind of person who watches your words because you don't want to say something that you'll regret. However, with Uranus there, it can lead to some unpredictability, and it's just important to be cautious of this as especially with Uranus in your third house, you can have a lot of interesting relationships with people in your family, like your siblings, and so you don't want to like off put them for expressing your opinion in a way that they can't understand. Your Venus is also in Scorpio in the 12th house. We've talked about this. You have a Scorpio stellium. And I really want to talk about how Venus is conjunct to Jupiter here, which means that you have a very grand idea when it comes to love. You might have an indulgent side to you, and you may be considered someone who's hard to control in a sense. However, you're the kind of person whose heart may be too big for you at times, which means that you care so deeply and you want to make sure that other people feel taken care of. And sometimes it can be very hard to make sure everybody else is okay if you're not making sure that you're okay. You have a very strong opinion about love and friendships, and you'll do whatever you can for your loved ones, especially with Scorpio here. You are a ride or die. And understand that although your relationships are very important to you, you're the kind of person who likes to work independently by yourself. You're also always willing to help other people without expecting a reward. And this makes you a very selfless person. And so this brings a lot of beneficial relationships to you, and you may receive benefits, whether material, spiritual, mental, from sources that you not may not always understand or know of. And so just know that Jupiter is protecting you here. Your Venus also is conjunct to Saturn, which means that you may also have a hard time expressing your feelings, even though you do have that moon sextile there trying to fight for you to be able to express yourself in a very authentic way. Saturn is like, no, girl, you gotta learn how to do this properly. And I think too with Saturn's a little bit of a slow burn. So when it comes to relationships, you really just need to let things unravel the way that they're supposed to. You do have a fear of letting go and enjoying the moment, and this can kind of get you stuck sometimes in your relationships, but understand that the fear you have is just associated with a lack of confidence. And if you have a partner who reassures you that lack of confidence will just continue to be limited over time, you don't want to be with someone who demands too much of you because this can lead to dissatisfaction. And I think too, with the Saturn in the ninth house here, you already have a fear of failing, a hard time expressing your questions, feeling like you're going to be judged, or you have a very black and white viewpoint of the way that things should be. And so it can lead to a little bit of conflict in your relationships as you can be kind of rigid in your thinking, but realize that things change for a reason. And I think with you having so much Scorpio, you're a little bit more willing to change, although Scorpios do kind of fight back on change sometimes. They're a fixed sign. Scorpios are water signs, and water signs can't help but just evolve and move with the flow the way they're supposed to. So, as I discussed earlier, your Mars is in the 11th house along with your Mercury. However, I also really want to make sure that I hit the fact that your Mars is trine to Uranus, which means that your actions aren't always predictable for other people. It's interesting. I don't think it's a bad thing because it's okay to keep people on their toes sometimes and, you know, expect the unexpected a bit. I think you have a very strong impact on other people. You have a intense energy that people can't really understand because they don't have it themselves, but this is what draws people to you because you're very highly original and you stand out from the crowd. You're able to grab the attention of people and kind of hold up a mirror to them a little bit and be like, this is what you could be if you could tap into that potential. And I think that this is mostly because you're the kind of person who really needs freedom. And sometimes other people kind of get restricted by that. They can have self limiting beliefs and not really want to tap into the more intense parts of themselves. But with you, you have a Scorpio stellium, which means that intense is everything you do. You have a very all or nothing mentality, and this makes you really good at multitasking and troubleshooting, and you kind of have a restless energy to you. I also want to talk about the fact that you have Jupiter square to Saturn. This can create a tension between your desire for freedom and growth versus your need for stability and structure. Jupiter and Saturn, I wouldn't say that they don't get along. They just got a lot of different vibes. If you think about it, right? Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius and Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn. Right next to each other, they're kind of similar, but I always joke that Sagittarius are the clowns of astrology for a reason. That's just because they don't take things so to heart. Not to say they don't care, but they're a lot more easygoing. And so Saturn is strict daddy Saturn for a reason, you know? Saturn makes us come to terms with certain boundaries and restrictions and kind of pushes us to our potential. And sometimes Jupiter doesn't really like that when you want to be laid back. And so it can be very hard to balance your ambitions and understand what's practical for you. But you also have an urge for exploration and learning, and you really just want to understand how you can broaden your horizons. But however, there's a push and pull between taking risks and needing to play it safe. And so that's kind of what the energy is going on between your Jupiter and Saturn. I also want to talk about how your Saturn is trine to Pluto, which that's a very powerful aspect to have. I think when you have the discipline and the structure of Saturn matching the intensity and transformation of Pluto, there is nothing that you can't do. These are two very powerful planets, and it makes you able to navigate challenges. You actually learn from your obstacles, although it might be like, why is this happening to me? Later on, you understand the lesson and you can apply it very easily. With this aspect, too, you're very good at making meaningful changes to your life and just kind of understanding that it's okay to be methodical when it comes to your decision making because this will ensure lasting impact on your life. You want to make sure that you're making the right things. So, very strong willpower and capability to overcome your obstacles just will lead to the life that you'd want to live, honestly. The last thing, or second to last thing that I want to talk about is the fact that your Uranus is square your first house. Uranus is the planet of freedom and individuality. And with that squaring your first house, you might have felt really repressed when you were a kid. You might feel the need to assert your dominance because you weren't really allowed to do that when you were younger. And although you may have felt like the need to conform, especially to your family when you were a kid, it was very hard for you to do that because you stood out like a sore thumb without even trying to. And still now, maybe you might feel very different from your family members, especially with Uranus in your third house here and Pluto in your first house. It's like there's a slight disconnect to the person that you showcase to the world and what your family wants you to be. And so that can be kind of hard to navigate too. I do want to just quickly go over the North Node. And the North Node is like our soul's purpose. Our South Node is the things we're trying to move away from, but also the lessons that we've learned already in our past life. And with your North Node in Pisces, in your third house, which it's aligned with your Uranus too, you need to learn how to express your thoughts in a more imaginative way, letting go of critical ideas, understand that not every single idea needs to be practical. I think it's all about your thought processes. If you think about the third and ninth house, the third house is about lower level communication, like our networks, our siblings, our community, our neighbors, the way we communicate with those kinds of people. The ninth house is all about the higher mind. It's all about expanding our horizons a bit when it comes to our knowledge and bigger groups of associations that we have. And so you're learning how to adapt a little bit more when it comes to the third house. Understand that the details do matter, but not as much as you think they are. There's a balance between your North Node and South Node a little bit. And so that will be your lifelong lesson. I do want to thank you for letting me read your chart. I honestly learned so much, and I honestly try to make this as short as possible, but I think that this is going to be rounding out around 35 minutes once I'm done editing. I really hope you enjoyed this reading, and if you don't already, please follow me on TikTok at aries.baby99. I will be trying to post videos as much as I can here. I'm trying to find a balance between all the things in my life, but stay tuned because there's more to come. Thank you.